point and figure chart is extremely important. It's very different from everything else we've talked about so far today, but it is extremely important. A point and figure chart is the chart with X's and O's on it, and we see an example there. It's a rising column of X's and a falling column of O's. And as we'll see later, there are letters and numbers on there, and they mean certain things. We'll go over all of that. Point and figure charts actually predate most other forms of charting, at least in America. In the 1870s, traders needed some way to track prices. They were running around, I guess, under the buttonwood tree or somewhere down there by Wall Street, and trying to keep track of all the different prices that were happening for particular stocks that they were following. And they would just start writing down the numbers. They would just start writing down the prices on a sheet of paper. Those numbers they called those numbers figures. That's the meaning of the word figure, a number, not some shape or anything, but the number is what they mean when they say figure, and that's kind of the genesis of the figure part of a point and figure chart. And initially they were just writing these prices horizontally. They then discovered that if they started writing the prices vertically, they could do it more, it was easier to see exactly what happened, and you could also then see the high and the low of the day. Here's an example of what these early figure charts kind of look like. You have to imagine them handwritten on the back of some scrap of paper. But essentially they would write prices like this to track them. And then they discovered that by writing it this way, again, they got some additional information. They got the high of the day, they got the low of the day, how many times it touched the high, so on and so forth. A little later, around the turn of the century, and it's kind of hard to track the exact history of P&F charts. The P&F book that we have in the back there, Jeremy Duplessis' book, does an extremely good job of trying to track the history of P&F charting. A guy named Hoyle started to talk about point charts. And in this case now, instead of writing the numbers every single time, they just wrote the numbers on the side as a scale, and they started checking off they put little check marks, little points beside each number as the prices went up and down. It's just quicker to do than having to write down the price every single time. A little later, around 1933, another form of the point method came out, and this particular method, same as before, only whenever you hit a 10 level, instead of putting a check box there, you would put a 0. So at 10, at 20, at 30, you would put a 0, and at 5, 15, and 25, whatever, you would put a 5. And so that would give you a little more information about when prices were crossing those particular lines. It was in 1947 that the founder of Chartcraft came out with a book called The Point and Figure Method of Charting. And he then changed it to the Chartcraft Point and Figure Method of Charting. His name was Cohen, and he essentially was the one who kind of put this in stone, how point and figure charts would be created from now on. Most point and figure charts moving forward from that point in time have all used the Chartcraft method to one form or another. And in this case now we have O's and X's. We have, again, rising column of X's, falling column of O's. The only additional change that's been made since that time was this addition of letters and numbers to indicate the start of months. 1 is the start of January, 2 is the start of February, 3 is the start of March, so on. A, B, and C represent the last 3 months of the year. A is October. Thank you. B is November, and C is December. So this is important because the horizontal axis of a point and figure chart does represent time, but it doesn't represent time equally in a linear fashion. The horizontal axis can get really squashed or really extended on a point and figure chart depending on how prices move. We're going to see exactly how that works in just a second. But this makes point and figure charts very different from everything we've talked about up until now. And so in 1933, de Villiers, I hope is how it's pronounced, wrote a book called The Point and Figure Charts. Now, I think he was talking about point charts and figure charts as two kind of separate things. But over time, people misinterpreted that and the name kind of squished together, and the term point and figure charts came out of that. There are a couple other theories about where they might have come from. There's no 100% guy saying this is why it is, but that seems to be one of the more likely scenarios. Here are, again, the key sources of modern point and figure charting, starting with A.W. Cohen's book, and moving through some of his proteges down to Tom Dorsey, who is very influential in the world of P&F charting, and Jeremy Duplessis, whose big book is one of the most recent ones on the topic. There you see a couple of those. Again, rising column of X's, falling column of O's. The X's and the O's cover a discrete price interval, which is called a box. And so a box can only be completely filled or completely empty. As I mentioned, the horizontal time axis is not linear and can compress and expand as necessary. There are no price gaps on a point and figure chart. It's not possible. You're always going to fill in all the boxes as you go down or all the boxes as you go up. And then typically volume is not included in P&F analysis, although we do have it on some of our charts. There are some parameters that you have to decide upon in order to create a point and figure chart. And these parameters have a significant effect on the shape of the chart that gets generated. The first is your scaling method. In other words, how much price information does each box cover? Does each box represent $1? Does it represent $2, $10? Does it represent 50 cents, 10 cents? And then does that box size change over time? The third thing is the reversal amount, the number of boxes that need to be filled in before you can add a new column to the chart. And we're going to see that in action in just a second. The key thing to remember here is that there are some common P&F chart settings, and that's what we're going to look at from now on. You can change these other things, but most of the time people are going to be using traditional scaling with a 3-box reversal, which is the default. When you're constructing a P&F chart, there are really just 2 questions you need to ask yourself. At each day or each period of time, typically a day, you're going to get a quote from the newspaper or from the radio or from the internet, wherever you're getting your price data from, the open, high, low, close, quote information. And you look at it and you ask yourself some questions. Did the prices change enough that a new box on my chart was filled? Did prices go up enough that I can now completely fill in one of these boxes? If so, then I fill in that box and I stop. I don't do anything else. This confuses a lot of people. You can't do both of these questions. You can only do one or the other. If prices did not change enough, then the next question that I can fill in a new box in the current direction, the question then becomes, did prices change enough that I can reverse into a new column? And if that's true, then you do the reversal and you fill in the new boxes as necessary. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through an example. In fact, I'm going to very quickly go through because I want some wine. This example and the notes that explain it are going to be in your packet. But essentially what we're looking at, we actually don't even care about the open and the close value as P&F chartists. All we care about is the high and the low, because that's what's going to help us determine if we can fill in new boxes or if we can reverse into another column. But in this case, on each day, I've been adding boxes to this rising column of X's that you see on the chart. Now on the third day, was the high enough for us to add more X's? And in this case, the high is 12. We're already at 13, so the answer is no. We can't add any more X's to this particular column. So then we move on to question number 2. Was the low enough that we can reverse and fill in 3 boxes? Remember, we're using a 3-box reversal chart here. That's the default setting. So we need to make sure, if we reverse, we can only reverse and fill in 3 or more boxes when we do that. And in this case, the answer is yes. We can go all the way down to fill in 10. Now, keep in mind, see the low for that day was 9.4. You have to get all the way below 9 when you're going down, you have to get all the way below 9 to fill in the 9 box. So in this case, the 9 box is only essentially partially filled, so it doesn't get an O. So now we move on to the next day. Can we add more O's going down? The answer is no. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the high. You're right. The low is 8.1. And because it's 8.1 below 9, we can fill in that box. And so we do that and we stop. We don't do anything else. We don't even look at the other value, frankly. We just keep going. Question number 1, in this case, can we add more O's? The low is 8.2. That doesn't fill in the 8 box, so the answer is no. Question number 2, can we reverse into the new column with 3 filled boxes? The answer is no. That's correct. So what do? We do nothing, which is kind of weird. A bar chart, you always do something. P&F charts can go for weeks or months with nothing happening to them because they only have information added to a P&F chart when prices are volatile enough to justify adding that information. That makes them extremely different. I really can't take, we're going to be here forever. I can't take questions right now. Please see me afterwards. Doing nothing is a completely valid action for a P&F chart. Let's keep going quickly. Can we add more O's? Nope. Can we reverse? Yes. And so in this case, with a high of 13.8, we can move all the way up. 11.7 and 7.5. Can we add more X's? Because now we're in a column of X's, we're going up. So we're looking at the highs. Can we add more X's? No. Can we reverse and add 3 filled boxes? Yes, we can. We go way back down to 7. This is a very volatile stock. Almost done here. Can we extend down below the 7 and fill in the 7 box with an O? We can't. Can we reverse? Yep. Back up to 11, and then 2 more. During this period, prices first moved higher. See, the high goes up to 14.6, but then prices collapsed, and they finished down around 10. So this is the tricky case. What should we do? We always start with question number 1. Can we add more X's to this chart? The answer is yes. So we do that, and we stop. Now, we actually, 2 days ago, we got questions, a bunch of questions in from people about the Dow, about the point and figure chart of the Dow. Because that was the day, was it 2 days ago or yesterday? It was 2 days ago, where the Dow had gone way down and then recovered strongly. But the point and figure charts did not show that recovery. They didn't show the recovery for this exact reason. Before the Dow recovered, it went down just a little bit, just enough to add another O to the current column it was in. We added the O and we stopped. That meant that the reversal that happened later in the day did not appear on the P&F chart. It appeared the next day, as we see in this case here.